Hey, welcome back to Dad Drinks, where every pour tells a story. Merry Christmas. Christmas was yesterday, so we're heading into New Year's. And as Bill Belichick is wont to say, I don't want to talk about New Year's. Christmas. We're on to New Year's. So tonight, what we're going to make is, well, the story we're going to talk about is Evel Knievel, because back in New Year's Eve in 1967 was when he tried to jump the fountains at Caesar's Palace. So I was looking around trying to figure out what kind of drink would Evel Knievel have drunk. And I actually came across this thing, and it was an actual drink called the Evel Knievel. So let's make that. You're going to take peach schnapps. You're going to fill up half a shot glass. This is Mr. Boston peach schnapps, because for all those liqueurs that are kind of weird, that's what you get, Mr. Boston or De Kuyper. I remember this when I was a kid. My parents having Mr. Boston, all kinds of stuff on their bar. Then you're going to take some rum. You're going to fill up the other half of the shot glass. Then you have already pre-chilled your glass. Put it in the fridge, throw some ice in it, take the ice out. One-third to one-half of a cup of energy drink, such as Red Bull, which, is apropos because Red Bull has a lot of guys who are like extreme sports people who do things like jump over fountains, which we'll get to in a minute. Now, here's the key part. What you got to do is you got to light your shot on fire. I know you're looking at it and you're going, that's not on fire. I assure you it is. You just can't really see it on the camera because it's a blue flame. Now, without burning myself, you're going to take the shot and drop it like an Irish car bomb into your energy drink and then drink up. Okay, that's not half bad. I honestly figured I was going to be telling all of you guys, yeah, that's awful. That's horrible. I drank it so you don't have to. And the whole point behind lighting the shot on fire and everything else is that, when Evel Knievel would do his jumps, a lot of times they would end in fiery disasters. So, let's talk about that. So, Evel Knievel was, I would say, if you look at yacht rock and you go to the three patron saints of yacht rock, where, Kenny Loggins, Michael McDonald, and Christopher Cross. Well, Evel Knievel was probably one of the patron saints of Wide World of Sports. We talked about that a few videos back, how Wide World of Sports had all these weird things on it. And one of the things that they would almost always do is whenever Evel Knievel was jumping something, you would see that a couple of weeks later on tape delay. So, back in 1967, Evel decided that he was going to jump the fountains at Caesar's Palace. Now, if you've been to Vegas, that whole area of Caesar's Palace does not look anything like it did when Evel tried to jump it. When Evel tried to jump the fountains, basically the ramp that he used, or the takeoff area that he used, was the road that would take you to the front entrance of Caesar's, which basically extended all the way out to the Strip. The problem was that once he jumped those fountains, he was going to have a very short landing area on the other side, which he had to be cognizant of. So this was a 140-foot jump. It was the longest jump of Evel's career. It would be the longest jump he would ever attempt. And the thing is, Evel was a showman. So Evel knew how to ramp up the crowds. And what he would do is he would, go back there, start at the start point, and go zooming down the ramp, and then go zooming down the runway, and at the last minute, before he got to the ramp, he'd pull off to the side and just kind of coast along. He'd do that a couple of times. Everyone's getting excited. All these people, is he going to jump it? When's he going to jump it? What's going to happen? Then he would take and do the same thing, except this time he'd go and he'd hit the ramp, and then he'd just coast up to the top of the ramp and just kind of sit there at the top. And he would sit there for a moment like he was staring off into the abyss, like he was contemplating what was going to happen. And he'd do that a couple of times. And then finally, he would just make that run all the way, and he starts down at Caesars, starts down the entrance roadway, hits the ramp, goes up on top, and then everything goes to hell. If you've watched this, what you can see is he starts to come over the top, and at the top, all of a sudden the bike starts to go like this, and he starts to lose it. And then when he actually hits the ramp, he hit the ramp a little too short, because you don't want to hit that top of the ramp. You actually want to land roughly, I guess, about a third of the way down the ramp. He hits the top, and then if you've seen the clips on YouTube, he just becomes a rag doll. I mean, he's just bending in ways that human beings should not bend. Now, if you've seen any of his other jumps, I mean, there were a lot of times where Evel would end up hurt. One of them was at Wembley Stadium, where he tried to jump, I think it was like 14 buses. And he injured himself pretty severely at Wembley, but he would not allow them to put him on a stretcher or anything else. He got up and he walked off until he got out of everyone's sight, and then they put him in the stretcher, took him to the hospital. Well, not at Caesars, because at Caesars, after he finished scraping along the ground where he had landed and the bike, ended up in about 27 pieces, Evel was unconscious. He was in a coma for 29 days. He ended up in a hospital in Las Vegas. He broke ribs. He broke his hip. He completely shattered his pelvis. And like I said, it was 29 days before he came out of his coma. And then, roughly about 6 months later, started jumping again. However, he never went back to Caesar's Palace. He'd do a few more jumps through the 70s, culminating in, I think it was 1972, when he tried to jump the Snake River Canyon in the X2 Sky Cycle, which wasn't even a motorcycle. I mean, I was really excited when I was a kid. Evel Knievel's going to, first of all, I thought Evel Knievel was jumping the Grand Canyon, and it was the Snake River Canyon. And then I thought he was doing it on a motorcycle, and my father had to point out to me before we saw this on Wide World of Sports. No, he's doing it in like some rocket thing. Evel actually, in his little shop out in Montana, built a steam-powered rocket. And again, that did not go off as he expected. As soon as the rocket pretty much hit the top of the ramp, or the top of the launching pad, or the gantry, or whatever it was on, the parachute came out, and he ended up basically landing in the middle of the Snake River, hitting sides of the canyon on the way down. So, and after that, he just I think he kind of faded away. He did some jumps up into the 80s, and that was pretty much about it. At one point, he ended up in jail because Evel was not a calm man. And if you got on Evel's wrong side, he'd let you know. And he tried to beat some reporter, I think, with his cane. So anyway, and then ultimately, Evel passed away. And after he passed away, his son, Robbie Knievel, actually completed the jump. In 1989, Robbie Knievel jumped over the fountains at Caesar's Palace, successfully landed on the other side. And when all the reporters got to him, and his first things after he took off his helmet was, "That was for you, Dad." That was kind of his legacy, his tribute to his father. And other people since then have jumped over the fountains at Caesars, including Travis Pastrana. And you go, why are you including him? What makes him special? Well, this is a story that then leads from 1967 to 2008. New Year's Eve of 2008, Mrs. Dad Drinks, who was not Mrs. Dad Drinks at the time, and I are sitting down, and we are watching different New Year's Eve things. And one of the things they had, and I believe it was on ESPN, was Red Bull. Remember Red Bull and their extreme athletes? Red Bull was doing a couple of different Daredevil things. They had one guy, and I forget who it was, but he took a truck and jumped it off a ramp, and I believe tried to do a barrel roll and land into basically what was a gigantic ball pit filled with, all kinds of other stuff that would cushion his fall, like, cardboard boxes and styrofoam and all this other stuff, as opposed to, the balls you would find in a ball pit. But what Travis Pastrana did was at Paris, Las Vegas, which is across the street from Caesars, pretty much, he decided that what he was going to do was he was going to take his bike and he was going to jump up on top of the Arc de Triomphe, land on top, and stop, which, I mean, it's not that wide. It's probably 20, 25 feet wide. So he came down this ramp, went up the ramp, jumped up on top, and stopped and landed. then spun around and jumped back off and landed on the ramp and ran out to the strip. Well, while all this is going on, I have plans going on in my head. And Mrs. Dad Drinks and I had always had this joke that had been a running joke for us for a while. At the time, I smoked cigars, and what I would do is I would take the ring off the cigar. As it got to that point, I'd take the ring off and I'd put it on her finger. And I go, "What do you think? You want to get married?" And she'd go, "It doesn't fit." So what had happened was Travis does that. It's now midnight or whatever, roughly midnight on New Year's Eve. It was probably a couple minutes before. And I pulled out a cigar ring and I put it on her finger. I said, "What do you think? You want to get married?" She goes, "It doesn't fit." At which point I reached into my pocket because I had gone back to our bedroom and I had retrieved from her jewelry box her mother's old wedding ring. And I put that on her and I said, "Well, what about this one? You think this one fits?" And that was how I proposed to her. And she said yes. And then the funnier thing that happens after that is the kid was home from college. He's off in the other room playing, I think it was Call of Duty or whatever, some online game with his friends. And we walked out and told him, and he stopped for about 30 seconds and said, "Oh, that's cool," and then went right back to playing his game. So that was how our proposal went and our New Year's Eve in 2008, and we've been married since 2009. So, Happy New Year. I hope you all had a great Christmas. We'll look forward to things in 2025, more drinking, more stories, and I will finish this off because, like I said, it really wasn't half bad. I figured it'd be awful. But cheers. And visit daddrinks.com for recipes, merchandise, and more fun stuff.